Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Women's Cricket Podcast, a show where we talk about all things women's cricket. It's episode 32. We've got Neha joining us like always. A slight bit of change. Of course, I'm back home in Bangalore. The Bangalore weather's sort of not treating me as well as I would have liked it to, but theek hai bhai, chalta hai ye sab. But Neha, what's up with you? How's women's cricket treating you bhai this last week?
Hi, Akshay. Once again, really happy to be here. I think the past week of action in women's cricket has been great, right? The women's 100 has been constantly just delivering a bunch of very interesting contests as well. I think just on the international cricket front, too, not a lot happening. So, the women's 100 was something that was just, sort of keeping us afloat. Even the ICC Women's T20 World Cup qualifier was going on, the Europe edition. Couldn't catch a lot of matches, but at least, just following up with the highlights, the scorecards and everything. And it was quite riveting, right, to see Ireland and Netherlands do their thing. So, yeah, just excited to see how we sort of unpack all of that in our discussion. And really happy to have you back in India, I must say.
Yeah, happy to be back in India. But the one thing I was looking forward to actually having more in-person conversations. But yeah, a lot of things happening behind the scenes. So hopefully, we will, be able to interact in person soon enough. And before we get going, a lot of you had mentioned in last episode's comments that why aren't we discussing the squads and what's the scene on it, guys? That was an intentional call. It's not that we forgot about it. Of course, it's hard to not forget about squad announcements, especially for something like the ODI World Cup. The thing is, we are saving our conversations and our opinions on them for closer to the World Cup for a bunch of reasons. Chief of which is the fact that we are planning something special for the World Cup, the way we want to preview it. So it'll be something lots of fun, something hopefully will be just as insightful as each of our previous guest episodes have been. So that's the only reason. So make no mistake, it's not that we not want to talk about it. We chose not to simply because we have something bigger in mind, and we will definitely touch upon it across our different conversations. If there's anything relevant or pertinent to some of the topics we talk, we will definitely talk about them there. But squad specific discussions will be had closer to the World Cup when we actually do the World Cup review. So that was about that. And secondly, of course, folks, please make sure you hit the like button if you haven't already. And please make sure you subscribe to us. Yeah, like we were just looking at our numbers. Over 40%, or rather over 60% of our viewers haven't subscribed to us yet. Please, the more you subscribe, the more the algorithm helps us push the video to a bigger audience, and the better we will be at building a community. So please make sure you hit the like button, and please make sure you also comment as much as you can. And also, of course, make sure you've subscribed and shared it with your friends too. Now that we're done with all of it, let's talk about the 100, Neha. I mean, we got our predictions bang on. We had Oval Invincibles, Welsh Fire, and Manchester Originals. Wow, man, looks like we can become experts now, I guess. Now all that remains is for us to find a broadcasting gig.
Yeah, actually, I think at this point I'm very tempted to wipe off the ethically sourced egg from my face because really sad that none of our predictions sort of came true, right? Really upsetting in that regard, but lovely to see some of the teams that we kind of did not peg to do well actually just punch above their weight and deliver in the manner they did, right? Let's take a moment to talk about Southern Brave. I think this season was that sort of a redemption arc for them, right? Winning 8 out of 8 league matches. Just hear it again. Winning 8 of all of your matches, leaving your opponents like absolutely in the shape they did after each of those matches was just spectacular, right? Absolute team effort. You could see how the group was just coming well together. Considering the kind of season they had last time around and the way they just turned things around in the absence of certain key players, I think they would be really, really happy with the kind of season they've had. For our other predictions, I think we will talk about it as our conversation progresses. But so far, yeah, the women's 100 has really given us those sort of matches that we can actually talk about so much. I mean, as we record, we still have the eliminator and the final to sort of come in. Just quite looking forward to seeing how those encounters will shape up. But so far, at least, the women's 100 has been interesting, and Southern Brave, just absolutely dominating and annihilating their opponents has to be like probably the major highlight that we should talk about.
Yeah, Southern Babe definitely, has been the talking point of the tournament itself, to say the least. The way the batting has performed, the way the bowling has performed, like Neha mentioned. In fact, one of the reasons why we weren't too sure of them, ahead of the tournament was, the fact that, some of the overseas pros, take a Sophie Devine, for instance, we weren't too sure how it was going to pan out for her. She was herself coming back after a fairly long self-enforced break. And for her to come back the way she did, she's the third highest wicket taker right now with 12 wickets. I don't think anyone saw that coming. And then you saw the likes of Lauren Bell perform as well as I think I've ever seen her bowl. Then you see someone like Italy, Coleman. Oh, beautiful bowling, beautiful bowling. So all in all, very comprehensive. Even Danny White Hodge herself up top, not in the greatest of form, ahead of the tournament. And then, yeah, come the tournament, she somehow managed to turn new leaf. Good on her. Freya Kent with very crucial cameos time and time again. Maya Busher also contributing here and there. So it's been a proper team effort for them, and that's played a very big role in why they have finished the group stage unbeaten. So good on them for being so comprehensive, man. I don't think I can speak enough about Georgia Adams herself, the captain, because once again, a market change that we've seen in the last couple of seasons is the fact that we've seen a lot more domestic players being made captains. You see Georgia Adams over here. You see someone like a Holly Armitage for the Northern Superchargers, who themselves have also now made it through to the final stage. You see Charlie Dean for London Spirit. So a lot of these names that you wouldn't potentially traditionally associate with captaincy, they have been handed over the reins ahead of, say, overseas pros, and that has definitely paid them very rich dividends. So, Higa boss, well done, excellent stuff. But another thing that we have to talk about over here, we had Welshfire Manchester Originals and, of course, the Oval Invincibles. Welshfire, oh my goodness, from finishing the group stage at number 1 last year to barely managing to get a win this time around, it's been a season to forget for them.
Absolutely, Akshay. I mean, not taking away the conversations from the women's team to even the men's team, right, had a very, very forgettable season. Again, pivoting back to just the women, for them, I think a lot of things just went wrong. That one solitary win, I think it was versus Birmingham Phoenix, they just lost all of their matches. I mean, starting your campaign with what, 5 losses back to back definitely doesn't augur well, right? Probably when you just put Welshfire's campaign in perspective, just microscopically look at it, their batting was just all over the place. Probably last season, what really worked out well for them was the fact that Hayley Matthews was doing well single-handedly, taking them to those big totals. Jess Jonathan was coming up with those cameos later on as well. The batting was doing really well, but this time around, if you just look at Welshfire, like, you could see how many times they were collapsing. They were just not able to get across the line. Can't even remember occasions where they were able to even put up those sort of decent totals, right? So that became a major cause for concern. And what's interesting is Hayley Matthews, the bowler, certainly stepped up and got them so many wickets. But again, you can't see a lot of names from Welshfire, say, in the top wicket takers or even the top run getters list, right? Which clearly shows that there was, again, dependence on certain players to perform, but didn't happen again. It's difficult, right, to replicate that kind of success in another edition. So I think it's probably going to be one of those seasons there they would just want to control delete. We don't want to talk about it. This just did not quite happen, and probably a lot of factors can be attributed, but again, this over dependence becomes the central theme of why Welshfire just could not get going and find themselves languishing like at the bottom.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, one of the biggest reasons that I felt they failed was the fact that they were depending on a few players to sort of win them the game single-handedly. The one win that they had also versus Birmingham Phoenix, had Jess Jonathan not hit those 4 sixes in the last couple of sets, I don't think they would have even ended up winning that game as well. But it was very heartening to see Jess Jonathan be so aggressive, because we've always spoken about her being that quintessential, anchor type batter who takes a bit of time, strike rate of 101, 102. That's usually been um, her range. Now, all of a sudden, to see her hit sixes for fun, both in that game against Phoenix and the game right after that, I'm forgetting who the opposition was. I want to say Trent Rockets, but I'm not too sure. But even there, she hit a couple of sixes, and it was very pleasing to see her, sort of don that new role and also be able to execute it to a fairly great extent. Tammy Beaumont, again, like captain herself, but like to say that this was a season for her to forget would be a bit of an understatement. 8 games, 94 runs, an average in excess of 12. You cannot have someone like that in your side, let alone someone who is your primary batter and your captain. And that definitely did not play into Welshfire's hands. In fact, it was very surprising because I remember the last couple of T20s that she played versus India, she'd actually done well. So I was looking forward to seeing how she does well, while being paired up with Sophia Dunkley. Did not work out for them. Hayley Matthews herself, was coming back from an injury. So we weren't entirely sure of how fit would she be to bowl. She did bowl well, all right, but Unfortunately, it was the batting that really, took a big hit there, and hardly any more support there from the rest of the side. Once again, that reliance on Jess Jonathan, on Haley Matthews, did not really work out for them. Shabnam Ismail herself, not the greatest of seasons with the ball, did not take as many wickets as they would have wanted her to. If you just look at her numbers right now, 9 wickets at an average nearly of 20, you would expect more than that from your lead pacer. Of course, those aren't too bad numbers, but when Shabnam Ismail is your lead pacer and arguably the only inexperienced or rather experienced pacer in your lineup, you are going to expect a lot more from her, and that's where they probably might have faltered. Hopefully, they will take some learnings, from this time around. You would expect that to happen definitely. And fingers crossed we'll see them, come good next time, because we've already heard from the 100 CEO Vikram Banerjee about how there could potentially be a mega auction next year. So in which case we might see a major reshuffle. So you might see a lot of these names going out, a lot of new names coming. So hopefully it will be a good time for them also to reset. Coming next, of course, to the Oval Invincibles. Yeah, side that everyone, including us, had in the top. So you're like, yeah, this is Oval Invincibles. They've got Maizan Cup. They've got Meg Lanning coming in this time around. You've got Alice Capsey. You've got so many of these names. Surely they're going to make it. But yeah, once again, a very, very unlike Oval Invincibles kind of season for them.
Absolutely, Akshay. Such a middling season, right? Middling also would be not the ideal word, because just winning two matches and considering the caliber of the side, it's very shocking that Oval Invincibles actually ended up, finishing sixth on the table with just those 8 points, and the net run rate also being in the negatives, right? I think one of the biggest takeaways for them in this campaign has to be Meg Lanning, right? Topping the run charts with 287. We saw her come in time and again with some very crucial knocks. I think in one of our earlier conversations too, right? We were discussing how her impact knocks, in spite of being away from international cricket for such a long period of time, just speaks, volumes about the kind of player she is and all the value she brings into the side. All Invincibles also had the likes of Alice Capsey, who stepped up whenever the team did sort of need her, and then Marizan Cup herself, right? When we just look at the kind of season, she's had very similar numbers, in fact, to someone like a Shabnam Ismail, where she wasn't able to get as many wickets as she probably would have liked. We did see sparks of the old Marizan Cup, but then it just didn't add up to something big. Overall, team effort did seem lacking with the Invincibles. Again, very heavily dependent on certain players to step up. And even just the dot ball percentage, this is another stat I was reading. It was almost like touching 40 for them. They didn't hit as many sixes too. So, I mean, these are obviously some of the reasons that kind of, ensured that their progress was stalled, and other teams just got the better of them. And just those back-to-back set of losses, right? They started off with losses, got those few wins. It looked like, hey, All Invincibles can probably fight back, but they just couldn't capitalize after that. And probably, yeah, that could be attributed to why, the team just didn't gel well together. And maybe this is another season they'd not want to look back that fondly.
100%. I mean, Meg Lanning was definitely a breath of fresh air for them. And once again, a name that a lot of people were looking forward to, simply because, yeah, she's retired. She's not played any professional cricket since the end of the WPL in March. So that was a fairly long layoff. And despite that, for her to be the leading run scorer at a tournament of the caliber of the 100 just speaks volumes of the kind of talent we're talking about. And yeah, now I'm just even more excited to see her, play in the WBBL and, of course, closer home the WPL as well. Fingers crossed, of course, that we will get to see her there too. But speaking of, their season, of course, this is an 8-game group stage tournament. The first 4 games, they started off fairly decently. Two out of the first 4 games were won by them. You sort of saw them, gaining pace, something that's not entirely unheard of for them. We've seen that previously as well. But losing the last 4 games, they just weren't able to get that win at all, and the batting just kept going from bad to worse. Like, you've surely got Meg Lanning as your leading run scorer, and then after that, what? There's a huge drop off when you look at Alice Capsey, who was the second highest run scorer, and an equally big drop off when you look at the third highest run scorer in Marizan Cup, and then your fourth highest run scorer, which is skipper Lauren Winfield Hill, 108 runs, strike rate of 108. You need more than that. And Paige Kapil, a lot was expected off of her, but there was just too much chopping and changing. She started off in the middle order and then eventually was promoted to help give Lauren Winfield till the middle order position. Did not really work out for them. The game I went to at the Leeds, Oval Invincibles versus Northern Superchargers. I barely got to my seat. First ball, Grace Ballinger comes in, beautiful in swinger, clean bowl, Paige Cofield. First ball of the game. And it was fantastic to watch, of course. But not so much for Paige and not so much for someone who's really looking forward to watching a lot more of her. This is something I've been talking about as well, off air and in our shows, in our episodes as well. Given that she got the WBBA gig, she and Maddie Villiers, these were two players I was really looking forward to seeing a lot more of because I wanted to see what caught the eye of the WBBL scouts. Unfortunately, a season to forget for Paige herself and with the ball. Yaar, matlab, again, not enough performances. Sure, there were a lot of people chipping in, but just not chipping in enough to help them win these games. Highest wicket taker, Marizan Cup, she ended up with just 9 wickets. That's less than half of the current highest wicket taker, Lauren Bell, 19. So this goes on to show matlab, the bowling did not really perform. Highest wicket taker. And with Cup, I don't think she had an entirely bad season all round. If you look at it, 167 runs, strike rate of 135, 9 wickets, economy of 6.6, 6.7. Great stuff. Great all round performance. But that's where, because she is supposed to be the glue that binds the departments together, she's supposed to be that match winner for them. Unfortunately, they wanted a lot more from her. They were probably depending or relying on her a bit too much. That's why, like, at the end of the day, the responsibility will have to be shouldered by multiple players and the team as a whole. I wouldn't want to pinpoint and say this was the reason why they faltered. But again, another side like the Wildfire, for whom the reset couldn't have come at a better point in time. They've done phenomenally well across the previous 4 seasons. Sure, season to forget this time around, but good time for them to reset, potentially look at new names to bring in and to let go of certain names that might not be fitting the puzzle. Serin Spale, I think she would do much better in another place, say a Manchester Originals or potentially even a Trent Rockets. So hopefully we will get to see more of these talents do well, not just for their respective teams, but also for the 100 in general. So that was all Invincibles. The other team, of course, yeah, Manchester Originals, the side that I was rooting for. Ah, man, that bowling attack, it's a crime. It's genuinely a crime that you do not make it through to the knockouts with that bowling attack. And that knockout spot was there for them to lose. And they lost both their last games. यार मतलब नेहा क्या बोले यार इनको.
I think actually Manchester Originals becomes a really interesting case study of even if you have like the best possible names in your team, it does not guarantee you a win, right? I think closer to home, we've seen this pan out for RCB. You have the best of the best player, marquee players, and you still can't do. On paper, when we looked at Manchester Originals, you have Beth Mooney, you have Amelia Kerr, you have Deandra Doughton. I mean, what more could you possibly ask for, right? But I think again, just the over reliance and dependence on these characters to step up and do is unfair, right? Beth Mooney herself had a very, very middling season, although she is their highest run getter with 175. I think besides that Oval Invincibles, versus Oval Invincible, she got that 70. I can't even remember a performance of Beth Mooney that really sort of stood out. Probably the captaincy burden also sort of got to her. Deandra Doughton too, right? We usually sort of associate her with a very high strike rate, but her too, with just 125 or was her strike rate, which was slightly disappointing in that regard. Amelia Kerr too looked like a very pale shadow to her otherwise very dominant self. Sophie Eccleston too did emerge as one of their highest wicket takers with 10. But through the season, we saw her, go through waves of like ups and downs. But again, it just takes me back to the same point that as a unit, they could not step up and deliver. I know they got those 4 wins, ended up fifth. There was a time where they could have really challenged, say, someone like a London Spirit or Northern Superchargers, but couldn't capitalize on those key moments. And even the batting at large, right? The number of times you'd expect them to cross that 120, 130 threshold did not really happen. That's probably just the one time. Most of the times they're just struggling and gasping for breath and see how they can possibly go from there. I'm still feeling they have a lot of positives to take away. Someone like a Serene Smail, right? I think she was brilliant for them. Like, although the strike rate and the number of runs scored may not really show, but she really performed well and was single-handedly holding fort when wickets were just tumbling all around her. But yeah, I think that's how I'd probably look at Manchester Originals. Like, they came so close, but couldn't quite capitalize on those moments and ended up fifth on the table.
When you look at the names, they have not just international, look at the domestic names they've got. You've got someone like a Sophie Eccleston, you've got Lauren Filer, you've got Mahika Gaur, who's up and coming, and add someone like a Kathleen Rice to that, who's arguably one of the better Scottish players, if not the best. So I think they had a very good combination there. Had they zeroed in on their strategy, it was very simple. We've got a very good bowling attack, and we've got a batting lineup that can help us just about get to par scores. So all we have to do is try and get those par scores and expect our bowlers to defend them. It just seemed that they did not understand this, or did not look at it that way. They came at it differently. The batters kept attacking, kept losing wickets. Seasons to forget, I would say, for multiple players. In fact, if I look at the batting rankings and the bowling rankings, not one of them feature in the top 10 batters or top 10 bowlers list. That just goes down to show, the kind of season they had. Unfortunately, they had too many names, but there was no single superstar or single sort of force around which all of these could group. And because of that, like, I'm assuming they would have expected Beth Mooney to be that for them with the bat, and say Sophie Eccleston to be that for them with the ball, because they themselves do not have the kind of season you would expect from someone as big as them. That played a very big role. And Amelia Kerr, oh my goodness, was it a season, man? Like, 8 games, 70 odd runs, averaging 10.2, just hardly contributed with the bat. And one of the biggest reasons why they underperformed while batting, because Beth Mooney once in a while would get out or run her partner out, and then Amelia Kerr would come and get out fairly quickly. Deandra Doughton came in, couple of very good cameos. I really thought she was bubbling up to this massive knock where she'll win a game single-handedly for her side. That knock never came. Yeah, that knock never came for them. And I don't know to what extent can you also, sort of put it down to someone like Ella McCohen missing out, because she was their designated opener. She would have opened with Beth Mooney, and her opening there would have meant the middle order would have picked itself, Amelia Kerr, Catherine Bryce, Deandra Doughton, and the lot. But her missing out meant that they had to bring in another opener. So instead of going for a backup opener, they decided to promote Catherine Bryce to the opening spot. And a very interesting move, a very me kind of move, I would say, because I like doing that, especially with all rounders. But unfortunately, not work out for them as well as they might have liked it to. She didn't do too badly, I would say, nearly 150 runs, but averaging 21, 22. You probably want a bit more from your opener. And yeah, with the bowling, I really thought a lot of them came up with individual performances, but yeah, just one performance alone, it's very hard for you to win with just one good bowling performance. It has to be a team performance. It has to be a lot more cohesive. But plenty of positives. Mahika God enjoyed watching her bowl this time around. Lauren Filer was breathing fire game in, game out. Sophie Eccleston, of course, 9 wickets, not a lot, probably. 10 wickets, apologies, not a lot. But I mean, you can still understand, not every season will be a great one for her. She still, I thought, was more than decent when it came to bowling. Amelia Kirk, liked her bowling, not so much her batting, but this is where they'll have to be a bit more smart about how they want to use her. But this is where I just don't understand. Like, you already had a wrist spinner in Amelia Kirk. Did you need another one, especially someone who's as inexperienced as Gregory? Like, she wasn't as good as you would have wanted your third spinner to be, which meant that they constantly kept leaking runs over there, and they hardly got any wickets on that front too. And that played a very big role, in all fairness, because what she played nearly 7 games and bowled in 6 of them, got just the 2 wickets. So yeah, probably they wanted a bit more there. Catherine Bryce, I really liked that new angle she'd come up with. I don't know how much of a role did the coach have to play over there, how much of a role did Catherine herself have, but it was a very unique tactic that they came up with, bowling round the wicket and in swinging into the right hander. A lot of batters did face a bit of trouble, especially when she got her line right. Yeah, it was beautiful to watch. But all in all, definitely positives. But yeah, man, like, you were there last 2 games versus Birmingham Phoenix and Northern Superchargers, especially that game versus I want to say Northern Superchargers. What they were chasing, 112, 113. That was your game to win. You, I don't want to use that word, but choked. Like, at that big situation when you had to just, all you had to do was chase a fairly subpar score, yaar. और आपने वो नहीं किया. So, yeah, I'm sorry, beg your pardon. I just confirmed it was versus Birmingham Phoenix and not Manchester Originals. Apologies for that. But yeah, positives, but definitely a season of what ifs for them. Next up, Northern Superchargers. A side that I really thought was pretty decent, especially that overseas contingent. I was very excited to see them. Phoebe Litchfield, Georgia Warren, who unfortunately got injured mid-season, and of course, कौन थी भाई उनकी तीसरी why am I forgetting? Who was their third overseas? Annabelle Sutherland, of course. Annabelle Sutherland, yeah. And yeah, it was very exciting to see them. And of course, they did well. Ravina Perrin, another name we were all looking forward to, did very well. Kate Cross, excellent stuff. Grace Ballinger, enjoyed watching her bowl. All in all, definitely a season where, as expected, we knew if they perform to their potential, they can definitely make it through to the knockouts. And that's exactly what they've done. I would actually say Manchester and Northern Superchargers are two sides of the same coin. Both have similar sides in the sense both have a lot of strengths. It's all about just backing your strengths and, playing to your potential. One side did, they are through to the playoffs. The other side did, and you see where they're languishing. But Neha, again, you would want to see the girls in purple this time around at least to win their maiden title.
Yeah, actually, I think Northern Superchargers has given us a lot of reasons, right, to actually stand up and take notice. The kind of season that they've had. When you just look at the matches they lost, they just had the two anomalies, the loss versus Southern Brave, of course, and Manchester Original. So besides that, they were such a dominant team, right? They were outright, just winning games, and it wasn't like they were doing something extraordinary and all of that. It was just, again the group coming well. I think talking to you off record as well, like Davina Penn started the season so well, but was kind of facing that slump in form, was not able to capitalize on whatever knock she had. But that's when the others stood up and delivered, right? Be it Alice Davidson Richards, be it Phoebe Litchfield, Annabelle Sutherland, coming and doing that. And the fact that their bowling was so disciplined, right? I think that really worked out well for them. Grace Ballinger, a massive, massive positive. I think loved what I saw of her. Kate Cross too, right? I think we'll probably talk about her World Cup snub a little later, but this season, right, we really got to see her, deliver time in. And again, they had Lindsay Smith as well. Nicola Carey, in whatever shape or capacity we got to see her in this edition, also did really well, right? So it was that bowling that was doing half the job, which made life very easy for the batters coming in later. And just these names, right? Holly Armitage, I think the captain is super underrated just to make do with all these resources. I mean, you already have Annabelle Sutherland and Phoebe Litchfield in a side. There's nothing much to worry, but to still kind of, marshal your troops and get them to do their thing. So Northern Superchargers gave me that impression of being a very well-oiled unit, of being able to just use all the resources really well. And probably the results speak for itself, right? I mean, to just end up second on the table with such a positive net run rate, 24 points too, right? I think that was really good. And Phoebe Litchfield herself was quite the revelation this season. I mean, scoring those 231 runs, such important knocks when the team needed her. They had a slow start to the season, but eventually we saw her, sort of unleash all of her amazing shots and just do her thing. Even the bowling side of things with Kate Cross and Annabelle Sutherland, both of them picking up those 11 wickets each. I think they just complemented each other really well. So Northern Superchargers, with the way they've performed, have actually given a lot of fans hope that they could possibly go all the way. It's just about how they're going to square off in that eliminator versus London Spirit. Yeah.
Just final thoughts on them, the way the batting and bowling function. Once again, just earlier we were talking about how you need multiple performers, only then can a team do well. It's not sustainable. Like, sure, you've seen teams historically do well by just having one or two match winners in the side, but you can't keep doing that, consistently. It's a very high risk, high reward approach. And that's why look at the Northern Superchargers. Phoebe Litchfield with the bat, Annabelle Sutherland with the bat, Davina Perrin to some extent with the bat, Alice Davison Richards, again, mighty impressed with the way she performed, because we saw her batting in the lower middle order for England, and then to be asked to open and doing it with great aplomb, fantastic stuff. And then you look at the ball. I was just looking at those numbers. Kate Cross, Annabelle Sutherland, both ended the group stage with 11 wickets. Grace Ballinger ended with 8 wickets. Lindsay Smith ended with 7 wickets. For the fifth bowling option, Georgia Warren plus Nicola Carey both ended with, combined ended with 7 wickets, which meant each of these first 5 bowling options averaged at least one, or nearly one. Sure, 7 by 8 is like 0.8 or something, but they almost average 1 wicket per innings. When each of your bowlers are averaging that, they are contributing to the game day in, day out. That plays a very big role. Instead of relying upon this one bowler who's picked 15, 18 wickets, you have 5 different options, all of whom on their day can pick wickets. And that's played a very big role. I had someone like Lucy Hine, we've not even spoken much about her. Like, all of these different names who just came in, did their job, moved on. So all in all, fantastic stuff for them. And like Neha mentioned, Holly Armitage definitely very underrated as a captain, similar to Georgia Adams. That way, like, names that you won't traditionally associate with captaincy per se, especially at a tournament like this. You want the big names to be leading the sides and whatnot. So it's been very good to see that, and yeah, fingers crossed they will be able to get across the line, calm their opponents, London Spirit tonight. But of course, speaking of London Spirit, another side that we really thought wouldn't be doing much, but somehow they managed to evade all expectations, Neha, and make it through to the eliminator. Happy, unhappy, angry.
Actually, honestly, pleasantly surprised would be the right sort of way to, capture my emotion, right? London Spirit had possibly the best starts to the season, winning 3 games on the trot. That too versus competitive sides, Old Invincibles, Welsh Fire, and, Manchester Originals, teams we had rated so highly. So that's why I just look at it in that vein of thought. But just the kind of performances that came in, right? I think for me, one of the biggest positives for London Spirit was Issy Wong's inclusion itself. I think she bowled beautifully in the season, right? I know the wickets column may not do justice to that, but then I could really see sparks of that, Birmingham Phoenix and the England player Issy Wong just, channel through and do so well for London Spirit, which was quite spectacular. Kate Kopak, you had Eva Gray as well, just stepping in and getting you those wickets. And London Spirit already had the services of Charlie Dean and Sarah Glenn as well. These are like the best spinners England has at the moment, both of them being in the side, definitely helping the cause. London Spirit's batting, was as a little circumspect and like concerned. You have very slow starters in Georgia Redmayne and Kira Chatley, but then you could see, right, they took their time to settle in, but the moment, the total was like within chaseable limits, they were able to do their things. Grace Harris was very much like the firecracker in that batting lineup. So every single time there's a collapse up top, you had someone like her come in and do her thing. Charlie not to, right? The replacement for Deepti Sharma also had a very interesting season, I'd say, coming in and chipping in whenever she could. Cordelia Griffith as well, someone I know is a name to watch out for the future as well. I think she was incredibly good. Would have loved to see Danny Gibson do a lot more, but let's see, I mean, if she does come good in the like knockouts as well. But again, you see, right, the fact that I'm able to say so many names and at some point they've contributed or the other has led, to London Spirit having the kind of season they did. And hopefully you would expect that they can sort of do well in the eliminator too. I mean, they are defending champions, which a lot of us, seem to forget very conveniently. But let's see how the eliminator sort of pans out. But just so many names and positives for them so far.
Yeah, me, bhai, I'm sorry to say, but I'm not even pleasantly surprised. I was just angry at the other sides for, like, again, no offense, but I genuinely think that there were other sides that had much better squads, that had much better names who could have won games against the London Spirit. But of course, that's not how the game of cricket is played. So, given all of it, kudos to London Spirit. Of course, they had a few big blows. They had Heather Knight missing out. They had Deepti Sharma missing out. In fact, even during the season, if you look at the way, say, someone like Georgia Redmayne batted, hardly any form for her herself. Played each of the games, still scored, judged the 98 runs, was striking at the early 100. So, like, there were not enough contributions coming in from that end. But from the other end, look at Kira, the way she batted, fantastic season for her, a season that I did not see coming. Part of the top 5 run scorers. And then on top of that, second as run scorer for London Spirit, just behind Grace Harris, who herself single-handedly won them 3 games. And that's what I'm talking, right? When a single player has that kind of a season where they win you multiple games on their own, it augurs very well for the side. But it also means that you're depending too much on them when it comes to the eliminator or the final, like these knockout games. So that's where I'm still circumspect. And with the bowling as well, yeah, it's such an antithesis. You look at each of the bowlers, be it Eva Gray, be it say, of course, Charlie Dean herself. Not a lot of them were amongst the wickets per se. Issy Wong, they all probably bowled well or did not bowl too badly, but they weren't amongst the wickets as much as you would have wanted them to be. Say Sarah Glenn even, or even Charlie Dean for that matter. Sure, she won the player of the match in that last game, but it wasn't like they were, really good or something. So yeah, it was a very interesting season. I guess that strong start on the back of Grace Harris and to some extent even Kira, that really helped. But yeah, good on them. They are there in the top 3, so their fans will be rooting for them. I know who I'll be rooting for, the Northern Superchargers. So come on, girls, let's go for it. But yeah, speaking of the other 2 teams, of course, Trent Rockets and Birmingham Phoenix remain. Let's start off with Trent Rockets. Yet another middling season, na yahan, na wahan, just very neither here nor there kind of situation for them, Neha. But again, there's still some positives though for them. Yeah.
Yeah, Akshay, absolutely. I think Trent Rockets is one team that a lot of people tend to, rate highly, but they just are not able to perform. This time around, one of the interesting changes was bringing in Ash Gardner as captain. I think she had a very forgettable season, right, with the bat and the ball. Didn't really see her deliver and do as much. Nat Silverbrandt, as usual, having a season where she's scoring runs aplenty. I mean, emerging as one of the top run getters with 256. Probably that knock versus Birmingham Phoenix, right? The 64 that she got definitely, caught my attention. Even Kirsty Gordon, right? Another name that I'm so excited to see. And she was amongst the wickets, getting those 11 wickets, especially I think it was that spell versus London Spirit, right? That 4 for 15, which was remarkable. Alexa Stonehouse as well. Have seen her progression right from the under 19 days on to here. I think she was another massive positive. At one point, I really did think that Trent Rockets had it in them to probably just sneak through into that knockouts, because although they started the season on a tough note, right, losing those two matches, they won another match, but again those back-to-back losses sort of really dented their prospects. I think what is the one thing that really keep them in good stead is the fact that they at least ended the season with like three comprehensive wins, and this is against versus Oval Invincibles, Welshfire, and Birmingham Phoenix. At least some positive in that regard to take away. But otherwise, yeah, as you rightly said, a very middling season. They could have possibly pipped London Spirit a little, but then just missing the bus by like a small margin. So at least they'll be happy they didn't end up like in the end, unlike the other teams. But still a lot of positives, I'd say, at least on the batting front, the way the bowlers were using the power play and all of that, just the kind of numbers you see, right? I think they'd still be happy with the way the season panned out.
In fact, if you guys remember the preview, this was the top order that I was really looking forward to because it was just filled with youngsters. That top three of Bryony Smith, Grace Crivens, and Nat Faith. I really wanted to see how is it going to play out for them because that's a lot of inexperienced shot, but there's a lot of potential there as well. And I really enjoyed watching Bryony Smith. Man, oh, what a batter! Like playing limited overs cricket or the shortest format, like the way it needs to be played, just going hell for leather from the get-go was fantastic to watch. I don't mind seeing her in the WPL as well. I think she's already there. Fantastic talent. I would have loved to see a bit more of her and Grace Crivens together. Unfortunately, Grace Crivens, with her lack of form, meant that they did drop her in between and she didn't play a few games. But all in all, even there, when you look at the bowlers as well, we'd spoken about that spin troika even before the season began during the preview because they were going to play at Trent Bridge, which is relatively one of the most spin-friendly tracks, along with, say, the Old Trafford in Manchester, which is why that spin troika was going to play a big role. They had Ash Gardner, Alana King, and of course someone like a Kirsty Gordon. And to say that Kirsty Gordon was the pick of the bowlers amongst these three shows how well she bowled. And of course, each of these three spinners did really well, and that's where I think they were able to punch above their weight. Where they really faltered was with the pace bowling. Alexa Stonehouse, personally, I loved watching her bowl. I thought she bowled far too well than what the wickets column reflects. Unfortunately, she was able to pick just the 3 wickets across those 8 games. But an economy of 6.8 while bowling in the power play most games shows that she's got those defensive skills bang on. And I really hope from here she just builds strength to strength. And I think we will see her amongst the wickets very soon. So that was very good. But again, that's a Heather Graham. I had my apprehensions even before the season began, and I don't think she's done anything to dissipate them at the end of the season. Maybe if you want to really sort of look at it glass half full, you might say that she was the highest wicket taker among spacers for Trent Rockets, but that's not really saying much considering she picked, just the 7 wickets. And that doubly pace, I don't think there is a lot of merit in a pacer like that in this era of limited overs cricket. I don't know what to call the 100. I want to say T20 cricket, but it's not T20 cricket. And her batting, once again, her batting has just nosedived in the last 12 to 18 months, to be honest. Just look at the way she faltered this time around. 70 odd runs in those 8 innings, strike rate of 98. That's hardly any becoming of your finisher. I mean, let alone a batter. So, given the fact that she did not perform well, that played a big role in that batting underperforming. And bowling wise, the spinners did well. Nat Silverbrandt not being available to bowl played a very big role there too, unfortunately for them. So, I do feel come next year, with someone like an Nat Silverbrandt, bowling at full tilt, and of course, mega auction or whatever it is, there will be a major reshuffle. So I'm hoping that these guys will also be able to come up with the right set of names, and hopefully we will also see them soon doing well. My the thing with the 100 is it's weird in the sense when you look at each individual game, I think any side can win it on their day, even Welsh Fire for that matter. But despite being such an open tournament, the trophies have been won by the same teams again and again. You see Oval Invincibles, you see Southern Braves. So I hope that changes soon, which is why I'm really rooting for Northern Superchargers. You need more new winners, only then can you also build the tournament, can build its fan base. So that's why the girls from York, come on, let's do it. Last but not the least, of course, we'll have to go to Warwickshire. It's the Birmingham Phoenix. The land of Elise Ferry is what I want to say, but of course, it's not the land of Elise Ferry. It's a side that she leads in the 100. Neha, yet another season to forget for them, yeah.
Absolutely, Akshay. I think Birmingham Phoenix just flattered to deceive, right? This was the team that we sort of did rate highly. They had such interesting players. Georgia Ball, someone we've been speaking so highly about, the kind of returns that she has had in franchise cricket lately, kind of gave us the impression that she'd be such a value add to the setup. Although, she did come and chip in with those key performances, didn't really add up. To a lot, right? And Emma Lamb too. I thought this would be one of her breakthrough seasons as well. Kind of did deliver, but then it just didn't, add up to anything again, at the risk of repeating myself. Stir Callis, I think she was a very big positive, just every single game coming in late in the batting order and still, stitching those partnerships, holding one end and doing her thing. I think she was just spectacular. Eddie Sperry, the batter, I think did really well, right? I think the run charts pretty much speak for itself, scoring those 208 runs. I think she was in that really good touch. But again, on the bowling front, right? They did have the likes of M. Arlett and Megan Shute, who were doing really well across all the games, emerging in the top wicket takers list as well. But no support from the other end is probably something that really did aid them. And it's really shocking, right? Although like they weren't that bad on paper and their performances weren't that bad, still like just uh, sitting seventh on the table with 8 points, a negative net run rate, and Ellie Perry's captaincy and credentials being once again question was far from ideal. Again, yeah, I think it was just one of those seasons that a lot of things did not work out well for them. They were probably also missing, right? Sophie Devine and Dissy Wong, who were once upon a time, a part of the setup as well. But the bowling looked very like undercooked, I'd say, and highly dependent on certain players to deliver. So yeah, actually, I think it was just one of those seasons they again want to like just erase from memory.
I mean, they have few too many seasons right now that they will want to erase, and that's not a good sign for them. But yeah, I would say that batting lineup was something I was looking forward to. Georgia Wall, Elise Peggy. There was Sir Carlos Sissat I was excited about. Ilsa Lista I was excited about. Emma Lamb I was excited about. They did come up with a few good performances individually, that is. But yeah, Georgia Wall, disappointing season. Amy Jones, disappointing season. As your experienced pro, you would have expected a lot more from her. Once again, averaging 10s, 11, striking less than 100. Hardly what you would expect from your number 5, number 6 batter, and even more so when that is an experienced domestic pro. So that played a big role with the bowling as well. Megan Shute, M. Arlett, and Hannah Baker. I thought all three did really well. Hannah Baker, I enjoyed watching her bowl. I loved watching Millie Taylor bowl. I was so disappointed to see her miss out the rest of the tournament. In came her twin, who I didn't know was her twin, Mary Taylor. That was I don't think I've ever seen a twin replace, her twin, at least, in women's cricket. So that was pretty cool to watch in some sense. Unfortunately, it did not translate anything on the field. But definitely lots to think about for them, especially with the way they've structured their squad. That batting needs a bit more firepower because you can't have too much inexperience and also expect them to come good at the same time. Like inexperience and consistency usually are at loggerheads because in the initial seasons, all of these kids are sort of getting used to these tournaments, getting used to that level. So that's where Georgia Wall, I will want to cut some slack on her, but that's where I hope Birmingham Phoenix understands this. And as much as Neha said that, they were missing Sophie Devine and Lizzie Wong, they let go of them. It's not like they were injured. And that's where, like, better decision making. And in hindsight, though, it seems even more stupid that they let go of Lizzie Wong and Sophie Devine, who went on to have really good seasons for their respective sides. But of course, fair enough. Hopefully, they do learn from this. Some of the names, Elsa Lister, Sir Carlos, you've got Dutch, you've got Scottish. So that was very nice to see, like, them giving, a platform to these youngsters, and these youngsters also not doing too badly. So hopefully that doesn't end there. But yeah, with the kind of options they have in general, they will want to sort of let go of most of their players and do a major reject ahead of the sixth season, of course. So that was that about each of the eight teams, of course. There's still two games remaining. At the time of the recording, the eliminator hasn't begun, so we're yet not sure. London Spirit, Northern Superchargers, who's going to make it? I'm rooting for Northern Superchargers. I'm guessing Neha will be rooting for London Spirit. So whoever it is that goes through, the final will be versus the Southern Brave. Neha, before we move on to our next topic, who do you think is lifting the trophy this time?
Akshay, very inclined to say Southern Brave, just out of respect for the kind of season they've had, winning all of your league matches. It would be an absolute travesty if they don't go on to eventually win the trophy. I know this is a very successful team, has had the opportunity of touching the silverware a lot of times, but it kind of also takes me back to a point you brought in earlier of the fact that if we have new winners, it just makes the competition all the more exciting, and that's why slightly left field choice here would be Northern Superchargers, just for the kind of season that they've had. So although kind of rooting for Southern Brave to go all the way, I wouldn't be really sad if Northern Superchargers also can just come out of syllabus, win the eliminator, win the final, and do the unthinkable, I'd say.
Interesting. I really think Southern Brave is going to lose the final. It's. I know it's very cliche, but and it sounds very stupid coming from me. But I do feel when you sort of have a season where you win each of your group stage games, it also makes you somewhere complacent in terms of how you've performed. It papers over some of the cracks that there do exist, of course, with the Southern Brave as well. And like Neha has mentioned to me, law of averages, law of large numbers, call it what you may, it is it we that's the reason why we've not seen too many instances of a side being unbeaten throughout the tournament and also winning the trophy. November 19th is a day that a lot of people are looking to forget. A lot of people in this part of the world looking to forget for a reason. But yeah, and I'm rooting for the Northern Superchargers. In all fairness, after Manchester, Northern Superchargers were my second favorite side. So to say, just because of geographical proximity, Manchester and Yorkshire, their neighboring cities, and I mean neighboring counties, Lancashire and Yorkshire. So yeah, excited, fingers crossed, and because I've seen them win live, all the more reason for me to see them lift the trophy this time around, so that I can go around shamelessly flexing and taking credit for the fact that I was their lucky charm. But that was that from this review of the 100. Next up, of course, lots more to talk about. World Cup venues finally announced. Unfortunately, it came in just after we finished our recording with Sharda Sridharan last time, so we weren't really able to talk about it. I know we are probably a week late, but still, it is important to discuss because we've been harping about this for the last 6 months. Neha, Navi Mumbai to host the World Cup final in place of Bangalore. Happy about it or what?
Absolutely, Akshay. I think Navi Mumbai being, chosen as one of the venues to host, the World Cup matches in place of Bengaluru is still a very positive sign, right? My mind again goes back to, the series that featured India Australia December 2022, and this entire signage that said, stadium full, tickets over. It just goes to show the kind of vibe that Navi Mumbai is. Like every single T20 you had, just scores of fans turning up and just watching women's cricket and thoroughly enjoying it without any concerns in that regard. So it's quite fitting that a venue like this finally gets its due and is hosting the women's World Cup. We did have our apprehensions with some of the other venues that were being reported to host the World Cup. So at least in that regard, yay, Navi Mumbai finally gets its due and it's happening. But actually, in the same vein of thought, it's quite concerning that the World Cup is less than like 30 days away and the tickets have still not been announced. There are so many fans who are waiting to go. I'm sure you're also one of those fans who are really waiting for the tickets to be announced. There's a lot of fans who are traveling and coming. Lisa Stelekar has her whole group, which will be traveling from Australia, and a bunch of fans like that, right, who are just waiting. And it's really, really sad that the organization and the administration is so bad that there's been no arrangement made in that regard. I mean, you wouldn't imagine this happening to any other edition of the World Cup. Again, the women's T20 World Cup that's happening next year, they've already seen a situation where there's so much demand for tickets, and everything is already available, the venues and all of that. So everything just happening last year, like happening last minute, does not reflect well on the organizing board. But yeah, I think that's the kind of situation we are in. But at least on the venues front, we have clarity. So yeah, all thumbs up, all good.
Look at how we are happy and giving a thumbs up to the barest of minimums. Oh, 30 days ahead of the World Cup, the venues are finalized. Good, all good, well done. But this is where credit where it's due to the BCCI. I appreciate the fact that they are equally incompetent across men's cricket and women's cricket. They don't differentiate. It's not like this is an issue with women's cricket tournaments. So at least there you can be happy about the fact that they're not discriminating. They were just as incompetent with the men's edition, and you're not expecting any different from them this time around. So fair. So good on you. I'm happy about it. At least that's one less reason to worry for me, or one less thing to talk about. But man, like jokes apart and some snark and sarcasm apart, I really hope some better sense prevails, man. Like, I can't believe this is an ICC event happening. This is a global event. This is a World Cup that happens once every 4 years. It's coming back to India after 12 years, and God knows how many more years will it take to come over here. And I hope it never comes, in all fairness. I really hope it doesn't, because the way it's being handled, let alone ticketing, let alone scheduling, let alone everything else. Oh my goodness, what's taking you so much time? For the board that is supposed to be the richest in the world, for someone with access to the best of facilities, infrastructure, money, resources, everything is at your disposal. Just hire an event management team, and which is what they will do, of course, and get this done. Like, I don't understand, why is there a delay? What is happening? Matlab, is there like a pandit or someone who's given them a muhurat ki boss, September 21st, do all of this, everything will be fine, India will lift the trophy? Is that what's happening? Yeah, I don't know, because it's so bizarre. And like you said, there's so many fans like myself. I know for a fact that I want to travel, but I have no clue how do I make my plans, because I don't know the tickets. There's no update on it. We don't know if there's again going to be a last minute change in schedule, because this happened so late. And I actually heard from a couple of people, apparently they'd already made their flight bookings and hotel bookings based on the initial schedule, the one that was supposed to be held in Bangalore and all. And because it's not even a straightforward swap where Bangalore games have moved to Mumbai. A couple of the Bangalore games have moved to Guwahati. A couple of the Guwahati games in the end have moved to Navi Mumbai. Like, why are you complicating this and making it harder for the fans? Like, where is the breaking point? I really want to know, where is that going to be? Because you just cannot keep taking fans for granted over here and expect it'll be fine. But I know it's happened, because November 19th, all of that shithousery came to an end, and November 23rd, when India took on Australia in a random bilateral, we saw the stadiums packed to the rafters yet again. So I guess that's how it's going to be in India. So they couldn't care less, and that's how it will be. And I'm being very harsh over here. I get it. I understand that probably I have been a bit harsh, but it's coming from a place of concern and coming from a place of wanting to see my favorite side do well. Simple as that. And yeah, man. Yeah, I just hope that they do get their act together, and we see an announcement or two coming in very soon. On this front, at least. But that was that from the World Cup chat that we wanted to talk about. But in that vicinity itself, of course, South Africa recently announced a 30 women squad for this training camp that they're going to do ahead of the World Cup. And surprise, surprise, a name that we saw there was Dane van Niekerk. Neha, she's announced that she is coming back from her retirement and she will want to represent the Saffers. What do you think does that mean for women's cricket and the Saffers, yeah?
I think it was such an interesting move, Akshay, because everything that had happened, transpired when she did announce her retirement. Then was really sad for a lot of her fans, including me. We just felt distraught, right? An international retirement at age 29, when you have so much more to offer, was absolutely shocking. And then even the very personal account of all the struggles that she faced in during the injury time, the rehabilitation, just coming back and doing her thing. I think when you just look at her domestic numbers too, right? Playing for Western Province was in spectacular form. And it was just again an absolute shame that she was not playing for South Africa. And I was so happy that she kind of reversed her retirement. And for a minute, I was like, is this like a parody account? Is this really happening? Like someone retiring? And and then just sort of reversing it and ensuring that they're ready to like make amends for everything that happened back then and actually be accountable for that. So it was just spectacular in that regard. And I think just today too, right? The head coach was mentioning that hey, she's not a part of like the World Cup squad, but will be looked at as an option for the future. And we've seen how much she's contributed. So it's good that at least her path to like representing South Africa is happening at some point or the other. And just being in that competitive environment will probably bring out the best in her, and for a lot of players who, in all likelihood, are going to be playing their like first ever World Cup. And this is an ODI World Cup, right? You'd want that sort of experience around the setup as well. So I was really, really happy to see that this is finally happening, and hopefully very soon we see her in a South Africa jersey. But I think, like, in a larger discourse too, right, just give hope to a lot of people who sometimes, struggle with body image issues, or feel, like, because you're a certain body type, you can't be that. I think Dane van Niekerk is clearly giving you reasons that if you continue to work hard, do your thing, play the game as diligently as possible, you can probably, stake a claim in your national side and make a comeback for the ages. So just hoping, she continues to grow from strength to strength, and very, very soon she will be playing for them.
100%. I mean, that's great news for women's cricket. I was very happy and elated to see that, and a tad bit surprised, of course, because I did not see that coming, to say the least. But it was interesting what the South African coach had to say. I'm pretty sure I'll be butchering the pronunciation, but I'll still go for it because why not? It's Mandla Mashalvi. And of course, he, in a recently concluded press conference, spoke about how that as happy as he is to see someone like Adani being a part of the setup once again, he's made it very clear that she won't be a part of the World Cup. She will be looked at, or she will be in contention for the Saffers post the World Cup. And it is understandable because there's so many of these girls who were brought in thinking of the World Cup, and you can't just suddenly, sort of set a cat amongst the pigeons and make so many changes just to accommodate someone like Adani. As big as she is, of course, make no mistake, I know she'll add a lot of value to the side. I would have loved to see her. But given that most names have now been, developed keeping the World Cup in mind, you would want to at least see this through and then bring in someone like Adani in. Although where I did think that, she could actually play a very important role was in case of Annika Bosch continues to be unfit, and if she's not going to be a part of the World Cup. I get that she has been picked for the 30-woman camp. So that's good signs already. So assuming that she's fit, then all right. If she isn't, then that's where someone like Adani, not just with her experience, but also with the kind of value she can add with the bat, she could have been a part of that middle order, and that could have helped them offset a bit of the void that would have been created by someone like a Bosch's absence. But I mean, fair. It's understandable. And another reason why I felt she could have been a part of the side was, of course, the lack of quality spinners. We've been talking about how South African spinners, they've just not been up to the mark. You've got someone like a Malaba. You can, of course, talk about Shangase. You can talk about someone like Seshni Naidu. There's Chloe Tran, even Sune Lees if you want to include. But again, all of these names haven't done enough or haven't put their hands up enough number of times to inspire some confidence in the Saffir setup, especially because it's happening in the Indian subcontinent. And you want to believe you need a competent spin attack. Not saying you need the best spin attack, of course. Not everyone can have the best spin attack, but you need competent spinners, and that's where I felt South Africa are probably lacking a bit of quality there. Malaba and all, they've been a tad too inconsistent for my liking. And Dane van Niekerk, with especially the added dimension of her being a wrist spinner, she would have nicely complemented someone like a Malaba, Shangase, Sunil East. I thought that would have been a very well-rounded spin attack that way too. But once again, of course, all said and done, we can also see where the coach is coming from. And I think there is also the right call, keeping the long term in mind. So hopefully, of course, the camp goes well for her. Hopefully, she'll start getting a lot more franchise gigs as well. The WBPL picks are also to be announced in a month's time. The last bit of foreign picks and everything. After that, of course, there's the WPL auction. So who knows? Who knows? We might potentially see her making her way back into women's cricket in general. So fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed for that. And that was that when it came to Van Niekerk's topic. Last bit, of course, the ICC European qualifiers came to an end a while back. Ireland and Netherlands qualified through to the global qualifiers. They'll be joining Scotland as the third European side, of course. Scotland joining by virtue of being a part of the last edition's World Cup. Neha, 7 teams already picked. 2 more will be joining through the Africa qualifier. 1 more will be joining through the East Asia qualifier. 10 teams in all, but it is looking like a very exciting event.
Absolutely, Akshay. I think the ICC Women's T20 World Cup next year is, able to get more attention and hype than, this ODI World Cup. But again, just the qualifiers too, right? They've absolutely delivered. Let's just take a moment to talk about the Euro qualifiers that concluded. Ireland and Netherlands, the kind of dream campaign that they had. Ireland was just dominating through and through, right? 5 successive wins. The manner in which the team was just turning up. I mean, this is Ireland we're talking about, who recently won a series versus Pakistan, has been doing incredibly well. just growing again from strength to strength, right, lately. So wasn't entirely surprised. And even Netherlands too, right? I think this is another team that has been steadily making the wave. So many of their players, plying their trade in England, playing domestic cricket, some of them even playing the 100. In the absence of these key players also to, be able to stake a claim in that global qualifier is just fantastic. And even the T20 World Cup at large is going to feature 12 teams, right? Which just makes it all the more exciting, gives you the actual vibe of a World Cup and what a World Cup really stands for, not just, making it an elitist or like a very exclusionary contest in that regard. So let's see how the global qualifier itself plays out, right? You have the likes of Bangladesh, Nepal, Scotland, there's Thailand and the United States. Now, these two teams joining in, two more from, again, as you mentioned, the Africa leg and the East Asia leg as well. We have one of the teams coming in from there. It's just going to be such an interesting, like, melting pot of some of the best emerging teams squaring off against each other. Wish there was more coverage in mainstream media about these events, because associate nations need it, right? And hoping that too happens very soon. But so far, yeah, I think it's all shaping up really well, and we're going to see a very competitive World Cup, that's for sure. I think that's an early prediction too.
Yeah, and for the uninitiated, of course, the next edition of the T20 World Cup will be a 12-team tournament. England, by virtue of being hosts, have already been qualified. There are 5 other teams that have qualified, along with England, Australia, India, New Zealand, South Africa, and West Indies are these 5 teams. And thanks to their ICC rankings, Pakistan and Sri Lanka will also be joining well. So that's 8 teams done and dusted, or 8 spots done and dusted. 4 more countries will be qualifying through the ICC Global Qualifiers that will have a 10-team tournament. We've already spoken about the 7 teams that have qualified, which includes USA, Scotland, Thailand, Nepal, Bangladesh, Netherlands, Ireland. So that's the 7 teams done and dusted. Then you've got 2 more countries, of course, joining in through the Africa qualifiers, and 1 last country who will be joining through the. And once this 10-team tournament is done and dusted, which, if I'm not wrong, is happening in Namibia, you'll see the 4 teams joining through to the main edition in England, and hopefully we'll see a fantastic tournament when that happens next year in June. So that's that from the T20 World Cup chat, and I guess that's that from this episode of the Women's Cricket Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like always, folks, please make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to us, and importantly, share it with your friends and comment in the chat. What do you make of the 100? What have you made of the World Cup venues and the logistical nightmare that it has been for fans, and of course, Van Niekerk's comeback. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.